Good afternoon to you, wherever you're social distancing, and welcome to this TARGETjobs webinar on sustainability, insights to future-proof your career. We've got a little bit of a different topic this time around for one of our TARGETjobs webinars. We are dealing more with sustainability than recruitment. So we are joined by two representatives from companies which are recruiting graduates, but they are not recruiters themselves. Before we just get introduced to everybody and get going, I just want to make the quick sort of loop over the ground rules. And the first thing is we have a question box on the right-hand side. Please do feel free to type questions in there at any time. We will answer them all at the end. If you could use the upvote button for the questions that you most want answered. So when you see one that you really want answered, click the upvote button and we will go down them in the order of the most popular when we get to the end. So as I say, please feel free to use that at any time. It is on the right-hand side. I am just going to pass you over to our panel so that they can introduce themselves. I should introduce myself as well. Apologies. My name is Matt. I am one of the editors at TARGETjobs. And I'm going to hand you over to, let's start with Alex Fraser from L'Oreal. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your job and where you work.
Sure. So as I said, I work for L'Oreal. I'm the Senior Visual Merchandising Manager for Maybelline, NYX Professional Makeup and Essie. And I am also the lead member for the L'Oreal Green Team, where I focus on merchandising and sustainability in cosmetics. So part of my role is looking after making sure stores look great in store. And in the last few years, I've sort of set my passion project to make sure cosmetics is as sustainable as possible through the merchandising of the stands and also through the launch of the Maybelline TerraCycle recycling program. So it's a big part of my job at this point.
Thank you, Alex. And Alex has got some really interesting insights. We're having a quick chat just before we started this webinar, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about her story of getting into sustainability. We're also joined by Paul Hayes from Cummins. Paul, perhaps if you could tell us a little bit about your job role and where you work.
Yeah, so good day, everyone. So I'm the Regional Environmental Director for Cummins. So I look after Europe, Africa, Middle East and Russia. So I used to have a global role, so I used to have 194 countries to look after. So I've stepped back a bit, it makes it a lot easier. So I started off as an engineer and looking after the environment on one of our sites, and I've progressed up through the company, so it's been really interesting. So I was one of the few that set the direction for Planet 2050 within the company. So we'll talk about that later. And if you go on our website, you'll see a lot of the information that we've been working on. So I graduated with a degree in chemistry and then got my master's in sustainability and environmental management, which is why the company's asked me to join you today. So.
Thank you very much, Paul. So I thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. And we have, for those of you out there who are watching, who are considering going into careers, we've got two very different sectors here, one in sort of fast moving consumer goods and one that is more engineering focused. So hopefully we're going to get a good spread of a kind of look at the concept of sustainability. I think the first question that we should really address is, what is sustainability as a concept? Because it means sort of slightly different things to slightly different people in some regards. So maybe I think we'll keep reversing direction, so we change up who speaks first. Paul, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about sustainability as a concept and what it means for you.
Right, yeah, of course I can. So Cummins was founded in 1919. So in 2019 we had our 100th anniversary. So we've been going quite a long time. And Clessie Cummins, who founded the business, basically said that the community is the most important piece. It's our most important asset. The community is where our employees work, where our employees come from, and also our customers buy on our products. So it was a big part of the founding understanding that without the community, without our employees, we're not going anywhere as a business. Of course, Cummins has got a bit bigger, and as I just said, we've got 194, 197 countries at the latest count. So we are everywhere. You will see us everywhere. So for me, concept of sustainability is basically the framework that helps link everything together. Really brings between businesses, your individual roles within the companies, and the rest of the world. Of course, that is different from everyone. Every single function, every single business is different. But sustainability, if you do it right, should reveal the threats and the opportunities for you as a business. Should help you with your social, with understanding the economics around you, and also the environmental trends. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, my always trying to get off mute. I'm glad that you mentioned that there's different aspects to it, because I think when a lot of people first think about sustainability, they think the environment, which is the sort of very fundamental level of it. But it does also involve people, and it does also involve practices, and it's creating sustainability outside of it. Things like fair trade may not always be as impactful on the environment, but they are impactful on the communities and the suppliers, on the people as well. So thank you for mentioning that. I just wanted to highlight that out there for people who are watching. Alex, how about sustainability to you? What could you tell us? What is sustainability as a concept?
Well, I think it's a very similar concept, but just sort of spoken quite differently, coming from like a marketing company. How we sort of phrase it is sharing beauty with all. And our company is a beauty company, and it's not just about sharing beauty through makeup, but as how do we impact our consumers and how do we impact our community as well. And that's kind of where sustainability is really passionate for me, is how do I not only share makeup and beauty products, but how do I share my passion of doing my bit for the environment as well. And I think as well, like you say, it's for the environment, but I think it's also an opportunity for innovation. And that's how I really love to look at sustainability, and how we can constantly innovate the way we work and innovate our products to completely have a great impact, not only on the environment, but our consumers as well.
Thank you. And so I think this sounds like obviously sort of, it should almost be a rhetorical question, because we know that sustainability is important, but it's making clear why it is important and why it's important to a company, for a bottom line, for the financial side, for the people side, for the culture side. Alex, maybe if you could start and just sort of tell us why it's important and why it's important to businesses.
Well, I think definitely from my side, our products are made from nature, and we can't just be taking everything and not giving back. So everything we must do is like, how do we give back to the environment? How do we give back to our communities, so that eventually we still have it here to in a few years' time, still continue to make these products. And I think one thing I would definitely, for anyone interested in L'Oreal, is really go and look into the L'Oreal of the future. We have all these amazing, by 2030, all these guidelines and also these targets that we're going to achieve. Sorry, I've just also got them off my screen in case I need to just refer to them. But it's just like, how do we tackle our resources and our biodiversity and our sort of carbon emissions, and all of these, how do we sort of make sure that we're not putting bad things out into the environment, we're actually bringing a lot back.
Thank you. So it's essentially ensuring that you can continue. It's not just a fast cash grab, it's be responsible and still be there in 50 years' time. Paul, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why it's important to you and to Cummins. You mentioned it's one of the founding principles. So, what is the importance of it today?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in our 102 year or 102nd year. We want to go at least another 100 years, if not more. I know when I'm going to retire on that line. But Cummins was founded as a diesel engine manufacturer. That's how we started. We know we're running out of diesel. We don't know when we're going to run out of diesel, but we know we're running out of diesel. We also know that in the 70s, with the Clean Air Act, that diesel engines as they were are no longer viable. We have to change. So last year, I believe we spent about $900 million on research, not just on engines, diesel engines, but on all other types of engines. And that's really because we have to be compliant with the legislation everywhere in the world. We have to keep up with the legislation, but we also have to, grow. And as Alex said, we have to be available and in the market when we're going forward. So of course, now if you look, we are now using the power of Cummins as a slogan. We really need to understand what our customers are after, what our communities are after, and then provide them with the power needs that they do. So be it electric, hybrid, natural gas, or even conventional diesel. So case in point, if you look in the UK about all the Nightingale hospitals, you'll see lots of generators outside the door just in case the power goes off. They're all ours, every single one of them. They might not have our name on them because very few things do have our names on them, but the engines inside, the generators inside are all ours. And so, just mentioned diesel, of course. Natural resources are in limited supply. No, we really do have to make sure that we are sustainable and we are in business, and we have to really make sure that we're doing this in line with the limits of nature around us. And of course we're working with mining companies and forestry companies, and we have to make sure that they're doing it right as well as we're doing it right. So.
Thank you. And there's quite a lot to take in there, because it sounds like it's a complete product overhaul. Everything from engines to generators so there's a lot of technical spec that goes into the sustainability there. But you also mentioned, you're teaching people about, just before we came on this webinar, you mentioned you're teaching people about sustainability as well. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about some of the sustainability practices that you have in the workplace that you would notice if you started working at Cummins?
So if we go back a step, I mean, the first thing Alex and I both said is, really we're looking at legal compliance, making sure that we are legally compliant with every regulation that's applicable to us everywhere in the world. So when you come into our place, the first thing you'll start seeing around is, we understand the regulations, we understand the limits and what we're expected to do. If you're talking about a diesel engine in your car at the moment, we don't produce those. They're too small for us. But if you look at the wagons on the road, we know what the legislation is that affects them and how it changes and how it will change into the future. And we're already working on it. So you'll see that. You'll see eco-efficiency everywhere. You'll see how, our carbon footprint is mapped, our water is mapped, our waste is mapped. You will see everything. And you'll also see the roadmap going through to, first of all, 2030 and then to 2050. So our Planet 2050 logo is everywhere as well. So you'll see it. We're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and our air emissions. We're looking at our water usage, our waste generation, even where our materials are coming from. So, and again, Alex mentioned about getting in natural resources. I mean, not long ago, we were using lead everywhere. Lead was freely available in petrol. It was an important component of petrol. It wasn't a 5-minute job to get rid of it. And those type of chemicals, those lead and even asbestos and the likes, are still floating around in the world, and we are responsible for making sure that we can, first of all, get rid of it and then clean it up. So our engineers are really busy looking all the way through that type of stuff, just to make sure that, again, we are available and we are carrying on for the next 100 years or so.
Thank you. It's really easy as well these days to forget that wasn't that long ago that we still had, lead was used in a lot of products. I think coal is the other one. The UK only recently just became completely coal free. It's still a problem. I know they even tried to phase it out in China, but there was a problem because people would still buy it to burn in their homes, and that would cause as much pollution as if it was used in some industrial sites. So thank you. It's really interesting talking about the materials. Alex, can we talk a little bit about, while we're on the subject of materials as well, what about sustainability practices at L'Oreal? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you came to work with them as well, because I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, what I think is what I love about L'Oreal is that, as I sort of said about the 2030 goals, we have a huge global commitment to it. But what I also love is that we also make sure at a local level, we're really putting our effort in. And so, for example, as I sort of said, I'm on the L'Oreal Green team. So that's just actually people finding time in their normal day-to-day jobs that want to come together and find ways that we can make L'Oreal's total, but also just L'Oreal UK, far more sustainable. And we're split into a number of different types of groups. One being just there's one group that just educate the staff on how to be more sustainable, and they're developing trainings and ways in which we can just in our everyday lives be more sustainable. They've also tackled things like we removed all plastic cutlery and, you know, plastic takeaway boxes from our cafeteria, which, you know, when you think about it, it's like that's a very obvious thing, but you still go to loads of places where that's an issue. And then I'm on the sort of more side of the innovation side of how do we actually change our processes. And many of the projects that I'm working on right now are UK specific projects that we've presented to our sort of leaders in Western Europe, and they're now looking at rolling them out across multiple countries so that we can actually make a bigger impact. So even, yes, you have the direction from the large company, but you can be an individual and a small person and actually make quite a significant difference. And that's what I've loved about my role. And also, like you say, so I started as an intern at L'Oreal on Maybelline, and I've built my way up. And it was just a few years ago that I kind of acknowledged how much plastic I was using on a day-to-day basis. So when you look at a cosmetic stand, it's made of plastic, and it's housing products made of plastic. And I just kind of had an epiphany where I need to make a change and I've got to do something. It's down to me. And that's what I, you know, in my day-to-day job, I've just tried to find ways in which I can change my business as usual processes to ensure I'm not using virgin plastic anymore. And when I started doing that from in my actual job of merchandising, my marketing director then challenged me and said, okay, well, you've done merch. Now, what can you do to help the entire brand? And that's where I started my conversations with TerraCycle and launched that project. So it's one of those things that just from like a small passion and something that I'm passionate about in my day-to-day life. I definitely was that housemate that would rewash your recycling or make sure you put it in the right bin, to actually being able to bring it into my day-to-day job.
Thank you. And just because I admitted to having a little bit of ignorance about what TerraCycle was as well earlier, perhaps you could just explain that, because you mentioned it to the people watching.
Yeah, sure. So TerraCycle is a really great company. So we have this issue in the UK where there's a lot of products that are really hard to recycle. And TerraCycle, what they do is they partner with brands like Maybelline, like Gillette, Febreze, and they create programs that make it easier for consumers to be able to return their items to be recycled. So Maybelline, we have like recycling bins across the country. We have about 1,000 across like Boots and Superdrug, where you can come in, bring your used makeup, and we'll collect it and turn it into something else. So because at the moment you can't put it in your normal recycling bin, and that's a problem. But until we're able to fix that at a country level, I wanted to make sure we've got a solution in the meantime. So that's why we launched this project.
Thank you. I think it's really interesting, but for anybody out there who isn't aware that there are things you can't recycle, and who maybe doesn't check the back of packaging and things as much as they perhaps should, it's really useful to know about these kind of schemes. Just because you mentioned, I'll keep you talking just for a few minutes longer, and then we'll move on. But I just wanted to quickly ask you, you mentioned the L'Oreal Green Team. Are you seeing that there are more kind of, what sort of jobs are you seeing that are being created in sustainability, or what sort of jobs are you seeing migrate over to sustainability where you work?
Well, loads externally and also externally because of L'Oreal in some ways. So internally, I wouldn't say anyone's got a very specific sustainability role in my teams just yet. It's actually something I'm pushing for. But a lot of people are adding extra time onto their day to be involved in this. But I do know that it is a big passion. It is something that our company wants to change, and they are looking for sustainability ambassadors for brands. I think especially when you look at the likes of Garnier, where their whole agenda is built on giving back to the planet, they definitely have a lot more focus and more people dedicated to sustainability. I think in the likes of Maybelline, that's coming because I'm hopefully pushing for it and hard enough. But then I'm also seeing this shift in all of my suppliers. So if it's not marketing you want to go to, but more design or production. So obviously all the suppliers that produce my stands, they are actually now creating sustainability ambassadors to specifically work with me. And they're actually managing all my projects. And rather than just managing the basic makeup stand, they're actually the ones going off and sourcing new materials and trying to find new ways in which they can work in the warehouse to be more sustainable. So it's actually also put a fire under all my suppliers as well to also drive sustainability. So I think it's not even just at L'Oreal, it's like everywhere. It's becoming such a huge agenda for everyone that there's going to be roles coming up everywhere. Thank you.
It's worth, yes, that knock-on effect where, if if a company takes a stand on it, then their suppliers have to feed into it, and on the other side, if you're retailing out to something, sometimes you need the retailers to conform, and it makes a kind of much larger change, which is really it's always interesting to document. Paul, what sort of jobs, I'm engineering ignorant, but what sort of jobs are being created at Cummins that are all sort of driven into sustainability?
So similar to what Alex is saying. So I'm part of the health and safety team. So HSE is my main function. Now, I am the sustainability professional, of which there's about 20 of us within the company. There's 66,000 employees, so there's not many of us, but it's getting bigger. So we do have a core professional people who are sustainability biased. We then have a bigger core, which is health and safety and an environmental biased. But as Alex said, we're getting everywhere. So if you look at logistics, how do you move your parts from one part to another around the world? Where the parts coming from, who's manufacturing them, how you get the finished goods out. It's massive. It's a massive area. People are just starting to think now is that we're buying globally, we're moving it globally. Do we buy it local? Do we use it local? The logistics team have to understand what the differences are and how it affects the environment just as much as how it's affecting everything else. So bigger than that, the supply chain, and of course Alex has just been saying, the supply chain is really everywhere. We have to really understand from end to end for every single product that we're making how it's affecting the environment. And it's not our personal job, it's the supply chain people that really need to understand it. We can think about the palm oil, we can think of deforestation, biodiversity, it all comes into that one. Last one on my list is really the packaging engineers. And again, Alex mentioned that one, the plastic, everything. Packaging engineers design packaging to make sure that your product gets from A to B and is in perfect condition. They don't think about the environmental issues. They're just thinking about it's got to get to their A to B in good condition. So now we're looking at how do we educate the packaging engineers to change their mind, but also bring in the new packaging engineers that really understand the sustainability piece, so that we're not chopping down trees to make wooden pallets. We're not shipping pallets around the world and then simply throwing them away, which is traditionally what we've all done. So I could go on for years, but I'll stop with those for the moment.
We'll hang on, because I think there'll be some questions about this later. But just because you've mentioned a number of things, everything about supply chain, you need to be aware of, are you buying globally? Are you buying locally? How much is it costing us to move things around the world? I know we said this at the beginning that you're not recruiters, but when you get someone who comes to work for Cummins, who's maybe a new starter or a graduate, what would you expect them to already know about this sort of thing? What would you expect them to know about sustainability when they first meet you?
Right. So for me, the easiest thing for you to do is to start thinking about what job role you're coming into. What is your area of expertise? I mean, I came in as a scientist. I was a research scientist. I spent 16 years studying molecules and stuff. I didn't come into sustainability. I got my master's in 2018. So, I mean, I'm really recent graduate myself. So so you need to understand what it is, the job role that you're coming in, and then what you can make a difference. I've seen some of the questions that are coming in now. How can you make a difference? What is the areas that are focused for you? So for me, you really need to understand what is the sustainability focus for the business. Alex and I are totally different businesses. We've got totally different needs, but we've still got the same plans. If you go on the website of the company you want to go for, you will see our mission, you will see our vision, you will see what it is we're looking at. And then for me, I'm expecting you to be able to align some of the what you're saying with what we're saying, so that we can then have a decent conversation. Now, Cummins don't recruit you based on your qualifications or based on, anything other than, is this person right for us? And we can tell that by chatting to you and having a good conversation. Your CV might get you through the door, so we'll be looking for some things, but really we're looking for the person that we know we can work with. You're a graduate at the end of the day. We want you to develop. I spent years developing into the role I'm doing. You don't come in as a leader, you don't come in as number one, but we develop you into that person that you really do make a difference. So.
Thank you. There's some really interesting stuff, and like I think if you mentioned sort of research the employer, I think is, if you are going to apply somewhere, know what they're all about. That's a given. You can look this up on TARGETjobs for those of you watching if you type in researching employers into TARGETjobs. But there's like just having an awareness of the area of the business that you're going into, I think is really useful as well. If you're going into the logistics side, you should know about you don't need to know everything about sustainability globally, every possible aspect of it, political, social, everything else. You want to know specifically about, you should have a peripheral knowledge about the various wider work that the business does and the various wider concept of sustainability, but you're not expected to be an absolute expert. And that was quite reassuring to hear you say that. I thought that'd be reassuring to those watching this webinar as well. Thank you. So Alex, what would you expect people to know about sustainability when they're coming into L'Oreal as well?
Well, I think Paul answered it perfectly. I'm not really sure how much more I can add to that. But the one thing I would also consider is asking the question of what I would love for someone to ask me what can they also contribute to sustainability. So like you said, you can do all the research online, but we don't talk about our internal green team on our L'Oreal website, and that's not something that you'd be able to find out beforehand. So if it is something that you are passionate about and you want to know more about how you can be involved, whether it's very small part, or as Paul said, as you develop more and you can become more involved in it, it's just ask those questions to the person interviewing you, because I'm sure they'll also get just as excited to know that it's something you're interested in and that you want to know more of how the company is getting involved.
I think that's if someone's on here and they're asking questions, like you can see that you're very engaged. You can see that both of you are kind of like, this is it, and this is how we work, and this is you get so much information that you wouldn't get just by sort of going through Google and looking for those kind of answers. Would you expect to see anything? And I know, as we've said, we're not technically in the recruitment sphere here, but would you expect to see a lot of evidence on someone's? Oh, we've lost Alex. Paul, would you expect to see a lot of evidence of, I know, as you say, you don't base it purely on a CV when someone comes to you, but would you expect to see that they've been involved in a lot of environmental campaigning, or would you expect to see something on a CV that said, hey, I'm involved in sustainability, I care about it, when they come to you for the first time?
Yeah, so there is a watch out on this, and it's greenwashing. And if you talk to my CEO, my big boss, he is very careful on this one. No, don't overdo it. Don't go so far into it. No, you are really trying to greenwash us, because we can see it straight away. I see you back, Alex. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I've never
so that's the first. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So greenwashing is really, you will see it everywhere. You will start seeing greenwashing just coming out of the woodwork. If you look for it, you know where you're going. And when you're the CEO of the company, you've been working at this, as he has been for 40 years, he sees it in everything. And when you present to him for the first time, you know it. You know what you've done wrong, and it's the same with your CV. Just you've got to understand the job role. As I said, you've got to understand what sustainability means for that job role. Try and provide examples, either community examples or actual examples if you have done any graduate work and stuff. But don't try and make it up, and don't try and go in over the top just because you want it looks good for us. We look at your transferable skills, we look at your soft skills, we look at how you work and how to interact with us. So if you've got community work on there, brilliant. No, if you can show some areas of work that you have done, now even voluntary work, then it will help us. And again, it helps us have a conversation with you when you come to see us. So.
Thank you. I don't think I'd heard the term greenwashing before, but I like that. That's really interesting. Sorry, Alex, we just lost you. That's the perils of live webinars.
It was going too well.
I think you have to have it happen at least once in every 2020, 2021. You have to have it happen at least once. We were just talking about what you'd expect to see on someone's CV. Would you expect to see a lot of involvement in environmental causes, environmental campaigning, and sustainability initiatives? Would you expect to see that on the CV? Paul was just telling us a little bit about, don't greenwash your CV with lots of things, because you will be found out. It needs to be real. But how about, what would you expect to see for someone coming to you if they brought a CV with skills and experience on it?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I sort of catching the end of what Paul said. I don't have any sustainability credentials. I don't have any. Before I joined L'Oreal, I didn't have anything. It wasn't really even on my radar when I was a graduate. But it has become. I'm much more passionate about it now. I think it doesn't even have to be part of your degree. It's kind of like what Paul said. Like, what are you doing outside of your sort of normal day to day to get involved and get educated? So whether it's doing like online sustainability seminars, or if it is like say doing community projects, like there are lots of things you can do to get that understanding and that base knowledge for sustainability without having to do a degree or something that's very specific. So that just showing your interest outside of your day-to-day is what I would look for.
Thanks. I think that's really useful for those who are watching this. Is you need to have an interest in it. Be real. Is obviously, don't greenwash your CV. An interest will enhance your knowledge, which is always going to be useful. But that doesn't mean that you have to be, super sort of, everything you can possibly do.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's one of those things where sustainability, like I sort of said before, it's very innovative. So it's constantly changing, and there's more we're learning about how we can be more sustainable. And so it's not, you can't know everything right now. And like, I'm still learning. Like, every time there's an online course for a sustainability initiative, I'm putting my hand up first to try and get involved, just so I can constantly learn more of what materials are out there and what processes are out there, and what are the consumers looking for. Because you could do all these great projects, but if the consumer doesn't want it, then it's not going to sell. So it is, again, it's a constant learning, and I don't think you can just put on your CV on this one date that I now know everything about sustainability.
I took part in this TARGETjobs webinar, so now I'm going to be the expert on. Yeah, no, I can see that's not the way to go. I think I'm just going to go one. We've got one last talking point that I want to cover before we make sure we have enough time for questions. And that is so Alex, if I start with you, because we'll go back again. How do you measure the effect of the sustainability initiatives that you've been putting in? Like, is there a measurable? I know we've talked a little bit about. Paul mentioned the legal side as well. You have compliance things you have to meet, but how do you measure the impact that some of the things that you're trying out have?
Well, a lot of, like, for me, because I work a lot in plastic, the measurable things for me is how much plastic I'm removing from my processes. So setting targets from that perspective, working with my suppliers to sort of ban certain plastics that are non-recyclable, that are difficult to recycle, or actually banning virgin plastic. So I'm sort of looking at from that perspective how I'm constantly improving my remerch kit. Well, that's a remerchandising cosmetics kit, like how I'm constantly improving, and not just myself but also my suppliers. And I think, again, like I sort of said, it's an ongoing process. It's not something where there's really ever going to be an end date. It's just constant improvement.
Thank you. It's I like that there's no end to it. I think that's a really fitting way to look at it. Paul, how about you? How do you measure it? And I think you've probably got some quite tough targets as well from what you said earlier.
Yeah, we're all about numbers. We're an engineering company. Everything is to do with numbers. So we set real strong targets. We don't expect to achieve them. That's for certain. So in the UK, we recycle 99.97% of all our waste. it's not good enough. No, we're still waiting to get to the 100%. Now, we started that in 2011. Well, back in 2008, I joined Cummins, and the first thing I said is, we're chucking what away? How much? And I worked from there on to now, and I'm still working on that one topic. That is my big topic. Making sure that we recycle everything, stop generating the waste. I mean, we've reduced our waste, actual generation, significantly. We've got solar farms everywhere. We've installed 23, or we will be this year alone, around the world, not just in our region, but around the world. Some are really small. I've got one building in Zambia, which has literally got a domestic solar panel on the roof. Something that you could have at home here. And we've got a solar field, which is 3.6 megawatts of solar farm in the middle of US. Now, it's phenomenal how much we do. But everything we've got on here, and I can reel it off as much as you like, we've got measures on it. My big topic for going forward for this year, and again, Alex keeps saying we know everything constantly changing. For this year, I'm working with water. My big topics going forward would be the Water Resilience Council, which is WaterAid and everyone else, but working at an organisational business level, not individual projects. Although we'd still do lots of individual projects. And that's my old boss, who basically I educated in sustainability and forced him to listen to me occasionally. And he's now the company champion and working with the Water Resilience Council. So for me, it's fantastic to see the progress and see what's been happening. So.
Thank you. That's absolutely huge. So sort of working towards 100%, recycling of all waste, and not to mention, I mean, even the sort of the impact of having solar panels, of actually contributing back, is because assuming once you produce more power than you can actually use, you're giving back. It actually sort of creates an interesting model. Yep. I want to move on to questions, because we've got sort of about 20 minutes left. So I want to go down some of our question list. I won't read out people's names. That's not to be offensive. That's just, I realize that this is being recorded and this may end up on YouTube. So obviously I don't want to sort of GDPR breach everybody's names into the conversation if I can help it. The first question actually that got the most upvotes, I think we've already covered, which is to what extent is an understanding of sustainability seen as a benefit when you're seeking to work at a company. We talked a little bit about, how to know where you're applying and know what area you're applying to, and how that knowledge is helpful. You don't necessarily need to know absolutely everything. The second question we have on the list is, we often say that sustainability starts with each person. How can we do that in the workspace, or even to push the initiative further further with the company's actions? I'm going to open this up, so whoever wants to answer, please feel free, and we'll take it from there.
I'm happy to start. I think hopefully that's come across from what I've been saying, is that it can really come from the individual, and sort of looking similar to what Paul sort of said when he found out, like, when I realized how much plastic I was not only using but throwing away, it really shocked me. And I was actually a bit scared to go back to the business and say, oh, we should change this, because that's something I was actively doing. And then as soon as I let everyone know, like put my hand up and said, I've got an idea of how we can really fix this problem, everyone was super on board and was giving me all the support to sort of get there. And I think it can just be from an individual idea or an individual solution that can really drive quite a significant difference.
Thank you. Paul, sorry.
Yeah, I fully agree with Alex. I mean, we have green teams all over the world. We start at the grassroots. We have every employee, every community project. So, we're allowed to take 4 hours every year as a minimum and just go off and do things. So, I mean, I've done loads. I've done everything. So, I've taught in schools about energy efficiency and sustainability. And I was just an engineer. Literally, I was just an engineer. And I was talking to schools about energy efficiency, how to reduce their carbon footprint. and it grew from there. And then now look at it, 13 years later, I'm the regional director doing sustainability, and that's my full-time role. So it does happen, and it does start with the individuals. Making sure that your voice is heard and you talk to people and you have a good conversation. But of course, the business has to have it as well. The business got to be open for these conversations. And these days, businesses that are will flourish. Businesses that aren't will be disappearing rapidly. So,
thank you. It's nice to hear that people make a difference. I think that's one of the things. We're not talking about small companies here for anybody who's just joined us. We've got L'Oreal and we've got Cummins. Both are absolutely massive international companies. And this is two people saying, look, I started and look where I am now in terms of working with sustainability, which is it's phenomenal for given the size of the company. So a lot of one of the next questions we have, and now a lot of the sustainability practices you've mentioned here seem like greenwashing. I'm not sure I agree with that sentiment, because I think Paul covered what greenwashing is. So I think that's a little bit of a misnomer with what we've been talking about today. But how can you enact meaningful structural change in your companies towards sustainability is the crux of the question. We've covered a little bit of this already. Would anyone like to expand a bit more? I think we've covered that. I have to ask.
I was just typing an answer, and I thought I missed the question. So tell me the question again, and then.
Sorry. So the question is really, how can you enact meaningful structural change in your companies towards sustainability? Now, I think we've covered a little bit of this already. But if you had any proactive advice, like what could an individual do if they were in a company and they wanted to perhaps change its message a little bit or change its thinking, what would you recommend?
I would recommend people starting with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. That's their big title. So basically the social development goals. They've got 17 goals. Most companies, whether they believe it or not, are actually now aligned with these 17 goals somewhere. And if you know what are core to you, you know what your passion is. And Alex is just clearly where she lies with some of these sustainability goals. I've got my passion with the water and so on. But the company has to fulfill a lot of these by regulation or by design, or just by want. We've aligned as Cummins with 10 of these. We can't do all 17, but we've done 10 of them. But individually, I've got 3 that I really like and I really go for, and I really do them well because I'm passionate about it. And so as an individual, if you've got those 3, you understand where you want to be and what really drives you, then the company will listen and the company will move it forward, and you will help them drive that forward. So. Thanks, Paul, and thank you for the. Could you just mention the name of the UN Council again that hosts those? Yeah, so if you look up Sustainability Development Goals, you'll find it. It's under the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. But yeah, sustainability goals is just really easy, and you'll find 17 of them. I think that's nice advice as well, is to look to a body that is kind of regulating this sort of thing, that is paying attention to this kind of thing, and you could use the information with the guidelines they're sort of suggesting for companies and take them to maybe someone, your manager, or take it to your boss and say, look, I'm really passionate about these. I think the company could do really well at these. How about we try and align? I think this is, again, people driving change. Alex, would you have anything to add to any of that?
No, I think Paul covered it.
So one that's moved up on our little upvote question system is, what are the best places, or which are the best places to find online training on sustainability topics? Does anyone have any recommendations that they care to shout out?
I don't know what your universities will have access to, but what I've always found really great in the past, Mintel do really great reports, not just on sustainability, but just in general, that provide really good information. I don't know if you have, like L'Oreal has access to a company called Coursera, where we get to do courses every year, and they have really great programs too. Just those are just the ones that sort of I have access to through L'Oreal when I want to do sort of, you know, some bedtime reading. But I think, you know, there's just so much going on right now, just even in the news, like you're seeing so many companies launching great initiatives, and they are providing quite a lot of information on it. So I would just, it's just keeping your eye out, because there's some really great stuff out there to read up on.
Yeah, and as an environmental professional or sustainability professional, there is IEMA, so Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. So that's my professional body that I'm on. So they do lots of training courses, lots of webinars. So there's always something going on. So you do have to subscribe. It's an annual subscription for that one, but they do free stuff as well, which is really good. But they'll also have a skills gap assessment on there as well. So you can look at what you want to do and how you want to develop yourself, and it will give you guidance. But it is really designed for the sustainability professional as opposed to just a general one. So yeah, like Alex, I just go on, generally just troll the web and see what's going on, see what comes through. There's always plenty going on. There's plenty on in the news, and the World Health Organization at the moment gives you all information. And you know, once you start opening your eyes up, you will find the information there. And again, it's a matter for you to absorb it and see what you want to do to make a change. So
thank you both. So it's IEMA and Coursera that Alex mentioned as well. If you actually, I think we did a webinar not long ago on things to boost your employability while you're in lockdown at the moment. You know, everybody's at home, everybody's got a computer, and we did go down a list of some of the possible online courses that are out there. If you for those of you who are watching, if you look at the TARGETjobs employability webinars page, there is a past webinar on how to boost your employability, and we do mention a number of different course providers that, as well as ways to volunteer to get involved with sort of different things connected to sustainability and environment. So I recommend that you check that out if you have the time. I just hope that helps a little bit, because I think there's really good suggestions there as well. Okay, the next one we have is, other than costs, what in your experience has been the main challenge or the main challenges that you have faced when trying to implement or uphold sustainability? Ricky.
I think for me, I've got maybe two. I think one of them is time. It actually takes quite a long time to put some of these changes into action, which for me has been quite difficult to sort of deal with. I'm quite a action-driven person, and you know, for example, with the Maybelline recycling project, I started my conversations with TerraCycle in 2018, but we didn't actually launch the project until mid-2020. A lot of that was also due to COVID delaying a lot of our launch program, but because obviously we're in store and no one was going into stores, so we couldn't launch. But you know, it can take a long time, and I think linked to that, my second point is just, are we there in the development yet? So one of the issues that I'm having with a lot of my suppliers, that I'm asking for, you know, bioplastics, or I'm asking for like different types of materials that don't really exist yet, and if they do exist, there's only really small quantities available from small startups, which obviously can't really sort of fulfill the orders that I'm going to be making for the whole of Maybelline UK. So that's kind of where I'm sort of struggling, and that links to the time, is that I'm just desperate for all these suppliers to sort of speed up, but it takes time to sort of get to this sort of level of innovation.
yeah, I'm similar. I mean, we haven't got enough people. We have not got enough people. We have not got enough packaging engineers, logistics people that really understand the way going forward. Now, we do recruit. We're recruiting everywhere. We've got people all over the world, and we're sending people all over the world. So I've got a lady that's currently on the way moving to the UK from the US to work for here for 3 years. I've just sent 3 people over to the US to work over there for at least 3 years, just to try and get different experiences and different understanding of what we need. But we're so short of professional people that really understand how we can drive forward. And then the other one is, again, the technology. I mean, we're developing fuel cells. We've got hydrogen engines. No, we've got natural gas engines. This is not a 5-minute job. This is multi-million dollar projects which will take good 5 or 10 years. The hydrogen business, we're expecting it to be in the 5 or 10 years probably the biggest part of the business. We don't know yet, but no, that's the way we're looking. So, and again, very few people have ever worked on hydrogen. So there's always jobs, there's always things to be going on, but the limiting factor is here and now is the technology and the people available to drive it forward. So
it's worth noting how much of a new kind of initiative this has become for the world. I mean, when we say new, relative to things that social changes that happened 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the technology is still evolving, the people are still evolving, the knowledge base is still evolving. Like it's going to take time, and I understand Alex's frustration when you're someone who's like, I need results now, I need that quick fix, I need that hit of serotonin. It's not going to happen for another 2 years. Ouch. I totally sympathize. I've got one more, and Paul, I'd never heard, I don't think I'd really come across this word before today, and now I've seen it 3 times in the course of an hour.
Greenwashing.
Greenwashing is
Yes.
back again. Could you sort of clarify what you mean by greenwashing versus a genuine passion and interest towards sustainability if you saw it on an application? It's more of a clarity point.
I'm trying to think of an advert campaign which is driving me up the wall at the moment without it being, saying names that I shouldn't be saying names. But so you can have a passion for the environment. You can and I fully understand it. I'm there myself. But you have to really tailor what it is you're saying and how you're saying it. I had one graduate that sat in front of me, and he basically said, I am going to be the next Minister of the Environment for Nigeria. That was what his opening gambit was. That he is so environmentally passionate that he is going to be the next environmental minister for Nigeria. Now, I have to say that he was about 22, 23. And I'd just met about a month before the environmental minister from Nigeria, because I was in Ghana at the time. And I'm sat in this hotel with these people. And the average age, I was the youngest. And I'm well in my 50s, and I was the youngest. So anyway, at the age of about 22, this is what he wanted to be. So we started that as an opening gambit, and we said, right, well, explain how you're going to achieve that. How are you going to get there in the first place? And then what are you going to do when you get there? Nothing, absolutely nothing came back from him. So you went through all his CV and everything was geared up to how fantastic it was, how he was driving the environmental forward, how he would change the world. But he had no substance behind it, absolutely none. And no, it's the extreme, it's the most extreme, but I see it quite often. If you've got a passion for the environment, it will come through without you having to put it on every other word. So you want a sustainability job. If you're going for a sustainability job, I expect you to show that you are interested. I expect you to be either working with schools or doing community projects or doing something. That will be enough for you to be able to start the conversations to say, this is what I like to do and this is where I'm interested in. Now, if you go back to the 17 sustainability goals, and you've got your 3, what good examples have you got to say that these are my 3, these are the things I look for? No. Now, I've been fortunate to go everywhere with Cummins. I have been everywhere in the world. There's very few places I haven't been. But I've done community work in schools in South Africa. Talking about water. In a country where they had no water. I had no water in the hotel. I had no water in the toilets at the time. They suffered no water. They understood the limitations of water. We didn't have to greenwash them and explain to them the importance of water because they'd seen it. So But I've got good examples of where I work with schools in the UK, work with schools in Europe and Africa, and that's my passion, because that's what and that's what comes across with me. So talking about your community work and what you've done will be more than sufficient to be able to show people that you are really interested. So
thank you for clarifying that and sort of putting greenwashing hopefully to bed for the next 5 minutes. But I think there's the key point that, like, I mean, you could see it even just when you were speaking. I have worked with water initiatives, I have worked with schools, I have worked with it's actions speak louder than words, really. I mean, if don't get me wrong, if someone came up and said, I'm going to be the next environmental minister of any country, and had a well-resourced plan that met all of the current guidelines, that was accurate within budget, everything else, I'd be like, well, maybe you are taking this quite seriously.
yeah.
But chances
and
are
I would be supporting the person as well, and say the least. So.
But yeah, without that, it's kind of empty. So yeah, I totally get what you mean. I want to see if we can get through one or two more before we have to wrap up. So we mentioned a little bit about suppliers and sort of the knock-on effects of sustainability from a company. The next question is, when working with other businesses, do you take into account their sustainability when working with them? And I suppose it's maybe, what are you conscious of when you are working with other companies?
Definitely. Like for me now, when I tender out a project, so when I look to a number of suppliers to manage one of my projects, one of the big criteria now for L'Oreal is that their sustainability credentials, their ability to be sustainable, and for them to help us innovate on our products. And that honestly, in some cases, that is ultimately the main decision I'm making when choosing to work with someone at this point.
Yeah, and we're the same. Exactly the same. It's we work with them, we'll help them. We even have joint projects where we can improve our sustainability together. I mean, you can't do it on your own. No one does. And this is a partnership, and in this case, it's a partnership with our suppliers and ultimately our customers as well. So
completely, like, yeah, it's such the best word is partnership. Like, we've partnered with our suppliers to have common goals that we both want to achieve by the end of the year. It's not just I'm nagging them for a change. It is actually we're jointly coming together and making that a promise to each other. And it's the same, and like Paul said, as consumers, that's how this recycling project, we're partnering with the community and partnering with makeup junkies to help us recycle makeup, because we can't do it without them. And that's the whole point of sustainability. As much as you can make changes on your own, you actually need the village to really support you and get you there. So there's so much reliance on suppliers and consumers to really make this happen.
I think this is the most wholesome webinar I've done for TARGETjobs so far. This is all about partnership and working together and making change. This is really nice. The last one, that I think we couldn't get through one of these without mentioning COVID-19. And the question is, to what extent has COVID and working from home impacted on the way sustainability is pursued? Has it become a bit of a background issue at the moment?
I honestly, if anything, it's really put more light on the issue, because this has come from us not being respectful to the environment and respectful to the way that we're living our lives. And it's just, I think, even just in consumers, you're seeing that more people are becoming aware of the issues. And I think, it's one of the things that we launched our recycling program. We launched the first stand made from 100% recycled plastic. It's definitely not slowed me down from a sustainability perspective. And I think that's quite clear with lots of other brands. Like, you're looking at Tesco, who have just launched a huge sustainability initiative, and Sainsbury's as well. They've just launched these huge, massive targets that they're trying to hit. And loads of companies over the COVID pandemic have actually changed a lot of their processes to make sure that they're being more environmentally friendly. So I think actually it's really caused a lot of people to really change how they're working and how they think about things.
Yeah, I was on a government webinar last week talking about working from home and about the carbon footprint mapping for people working from home. It changes. It's different. I mean, I've worked from home for 10 years now, so I'm used to this, but not everyone else is. but we've developed and we change, and I can't go and see the visits. No, I do really miss going to see the sites and the customers and everything, but we've done all that by Zoom. We've got used to doing it over Zoom now, but the sustainability piece has not stopped. The targets have not changed. We're still driving it forward, and that won't change. No, and we know COVID will come to an end, because it will do so. But we're still ready for it. We'll still continue.
Thank you. I think that's a good point to stop, and keeps very well with the theme that it still continues. Very last thing before we go, Alex, Paul, could you maybe just tell us if people want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing or where you work, or if there's, if they want to ask any further questions, is there anywhere you'd like to direct people to? No problem if you don't, but if you have somewhere you'd like to shout out.
Oh, well,
yeah, so for me, if you no, oh, sorry. Yeah, for me, if you go to look up Planet 2050 and Cummins, you'll find our website. You'll find everything that we've done and been doing. And of course, Matt, you've got our contact details if people need to. So.
And then I guess from a L'Oreal side, if you do want to connect with L'Oreal, there is great programs for graduates, for interns, for apprentices. So we've got some really great schemes at L'Oreal for you to sort of get the ground running. But also, if you do have any more specific questions for me, feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to try and answer as many as I can.
Thank you very much to you both. I just want to say a big thank you to Paul and to Alex for joining us for this. I think this has been really interesting. It's been very different, and hopefully it's been very useful. It's certainly been very positive. And if I could just say, if you're out there and you're watching this and you want to say thank yous, please do pop them in the question box, because it can be a bit jarring not being able to see you all while we're just floating boxes on the screen. So please do pop those in the question box, because I know that they're really useful for people to see. So I think that's all we have time for. Thank you very much to both of you for joining me. We just need to say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see you all in the next one.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.